From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Is everybody ready? All right. Thank you guys for coming out. My name is Michael Kavner with the Washington Post, the Comic Riffs blog. I'm a cartoonist, columnist, and I Trojan horse my way into the Washington Post, and now they run comics in a blog, and that's what I do. First of all, thank you for coming to Graphic Novel Night. This is the third Graphic Novel Night. The first time we've had a sitting congressman and a civil rights hero, so thank you, Congressman. You know what? Yeah. Thank you. And thank you. And thank you, Andrew Aydin.
Yeah, right.
So you didn't have much going on this morning, did you?
Not much.
Open a little museum on the mall and talk a little bit. Well, thank you for making it out. You know, this is a joy, a passion for all of us who do this. So we're so thankful to the Library of Congress. We're thankful to all the sponsors you will find in your program. Thankful to the Washington Post, which is a charter sponsor of this event, since Laura Bush had that idea 16 years ago, saying, Texas has a book festival, why doesn't America? We want to thank Small Press Expo. They helped some of this talent come in, so we're very thankful to Warren Bernard. And just everybody, look at that panel. A little story. By the way, I should mention one thing. I'll plug this event wherever I go. And I do the comic strip Warped. And so if you go to gocomics.com tomorrow, I have put in my comic strip is Warped. You will see an author joke. You don't get a lot of author jokes on the funny pages. The first person to send an email to me, michael.cabinet@washpost.com, gets the original art of this author strip. So just email me. Just email the name of the author. It'll go up tomorrow morning. So, thank you. Now, the reason, part of what's so special here, 3 years ago, my young relative came home from school and said, my teacher says graphic novels aren't books. My daughter had been reading Mouse. And then so I went to the principal. This was a cause. And I said, graphic novels aren't books? She said, graphic novels aren't books. And so I spent a year researching it. And the first person I went to was Congressman Lewis with March Book 1 right here. If you haven't read it, start with this, with Selma. And then pretty soon you came to town, to Small Press Expo. I brought my young relative and you gave her a civics lesson. And what you said to her, you said graphic novels are books. So can I just hear it once? Graphic novels are books. Okay, this has to make it out north of here to the principal. Just one more time. I haven't forgotten, long memory. One more time. Graphic novels are books. Thank you. This is about power. This is about perception. There are many kinds. We have a diverse night. This is more diverse than, I would say, a basket full of Skittles. Any way you want to cut it. Take that any way you want. The whole night, and I encourage you to stay. Noel Stevenson, our political cartoonist, Michael Ramirez, Darren Bell, Gene Yang, the new ambassador for young people's literature for the library, Berkeley Breathed, the whole lineup, Ed Piskor, Hip Hop Family Tree. It's an incredibly diverse lineup. But first, I want to say, 3 years ago, I got to moderate this man, Awesome Khan. Everyone was cosplaying. Next door, they were cheering for Hercules, TV Hercules. The other room, Superman. And I said, in this house, you have the biggest hero in the whole hall. No disrespect. You have the man who was preaching to the chickens, and he said they listened to him more than members of Congress. You have the man who was reading comic books as a young man, reading about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King in the Montgomery story and the ways of God. He got this from comic books at a time when Congress was trying to stop comic books in the 50s. This is a man who's the youngest speaker at the March on Washington. and continued through Selma to this day. He tells me he's still getting arrested, and he plans to get arrested a few more times to make good trouble. A few years ago, his staffer, Andrew Aydin, right here, said, "I'm going to Comic-Con." The office teased him. They said, "You're going to San Diego Comic-Con, you're a geek." And the congressman said, "Hold up. Comic books got me to where I am today. Comic books led me to nonviolent protest." So they teamed on March. The congressman said to Andrew, "I'll do it if you write it with me." 2 years ago, at the time, a 75-year-old congressman dressed up in what he wore to Selma in 1965. You got the backpack out. You got the coat. You got the apple and the toothpaste because you knew you might spend the night in jail. You couldn't find an orange in San Diego. I don't know why. But you dressed and you led through the hall dozens and dozens of kids because you are reaching the next generation with these books. Please give a hand to these two men and march. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is John Lewis. Thank you. Michael, thank you for those kind words of introduction. My friend, my brother, thank you. Now, some of you know from reading March that I didn't grow up in a big city like Washington, D.C., or Baltimore, or Silver Spring, or Buffalo, or Detroit, or Philadelphia, or Montgomery, or Birmingham. I grew up in rural Alabama, 50 miles from Montgomery, outside of a little place called Troy. My father was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. But back in 1944, when I was 4 years old, and I do remember when I was 4, my father had saved $300. And with $300, a man sold him 110 acres of land. My family still owns this land today. On this farm, we raise a lot of cotton, corn, peanuts, hogs, cows, and chickens. I know some of you that read March, Book 1, know that as a little boy, I remember when I was 4. I remember when we moved to another house with my brothers and sisters, my wonderful mother and father, and got to know my first cousins who lived nearby. But on the farm, it fell my lot to raise chickens, to care for the chickens. We raised hogs and cows. We grew peanuts, cotton, corn. We had a garden. But my responsibility on the farm was to care for the chickens. And I fell in love with raising chickens. But I never dreamed that one day I would be at the National Book Festival, sponsored by the Library of Congress, talking to all of you book collectors and readers about raising chickens. So I'm grateful to be here and grateful for the Library of Congress and for the new librarian. My late wife was a librarian. She grew up in California, attended LA High, UCLA undergrad, and USC Graduate School of Library Science. She went into Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Nigeria, came back and worked at the Central Library in LA. She got a job in Atlanta in 1965. We met in 1967 and got married in 1968. She taught me a great deal about books. 'Cause when I was growing up in rural Alabama, we had very few books in our home. And I remember on July 5th, 1998, by this time I'm in the Congress, that I went to the local library in Troy, Alabama for a book signing. They gave me a library card. But I had first gone there in 1956 when I was 16 years old with some of my brothers and sisters and cousins trying to get a library card. And we were told by the librarian that the library was for whites only and not for colors. So I never went back there until July 5th, 1998 for a signing of my first book, Walking with the Wind. And hundreds of blacks and white citizens showed up and they gave me a library card. It says something about the distance we've come and the progress we've made. But I want to go back to the chickens for a moment. Andrew would tell you that when I was a little boy, when the setting hen was set, I would take the fresh eggs, most of you don't know anything about raising chickens, do you? Some of you like to eat chicken, but you don't know anything about raising chicken. How many of you know anything about raising chicken? Oh, a few of you. Why don't we compare notes? Well, when the setting hen was set, I would take the fresh eggs, mark them with a pencil, place them under the setting hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. Some of you may be asking, now, John Lewis, why do you mark those fresh eggs with a pencil before you place them under the setting hen? Well, from time to time, another hen may get on that same nest, and there will be some more fresh eggs. Had to be able to tell the fresh eggs from the eggs that were already under the setting hen. Now, you don't follow me, do you? So when the little chicks were hatched, I would fool these setting hens. I would cheat on these setting hens. I would take these little chicks and give them another hen or put them in a box with a lantern and raise them on their own, get some more fresh eggs, put them under the hen, and wait for 3 long weeks for the little chicks to hatch. I kept on fooling and cheating on these setting hens, and when I look back on it, it was not the right thing to do. It was not the moral thing to do. It was not the most loving thing to do. It was not the most nonviolent thing to do. It was not the most democratic thing to do. But I was never quite able to save $18.98 to order the most inexpensive incubator, a hatcher from the Cicero bookstore. Any of you old enough to remember the Cicero catalog? No, don't fool me. You don't remember that catalog. The big book, some people call it the ordering book. Other people call it the wish book. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. So I just kept on wishing. But as a little child, about 8 or 9 years old, I wanted to be a minister. So with the help of my brothers and sisters and cousins, we would gather all of our chickens together in the chicken yard, like you're gathered here in this hall. My brothers and sisters and cousins were lined outside of the chicken yard, but along with the chickens, they helped make up the audience, the congregation. And I would start speaking and preaching, and when I look back on it, some of these chickens would bow their head, some of these chickens would shake their head. They never quite said amen. But I'm convinced that the great majority of those chickens tended to listen to me much better than some of my colleagues listened to me today in the Congress. As a matter of fact, some of those chickens were just a little more productive. They produced eggs. Well, that's enough of that. When we visited the little town of Troy, visited Montgomery, visited Tuskegee, I would see those signs that said white men, colored men, white women, white waiting, colored waiting. To go downtown on a Saturday afternoon to a movie, to see a movie. All of us little black children had to go upstairs to a balcony, upstairs, to watch the movie. And all of the little white children went downstairs to the first floor. I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why? They would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. But in 1955, 15 years old in the 10th grade, I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard of Martin Luther King Jr. The words of Martin Luther King Jr. and the leadership of Dr. King, the action of Rosa Parks inspired me to find a way to get in the way. I got in trouble, what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. March, book 1, book 2, book 3, a sin in effect to young people and people not so young. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to stand up, to speak up and speak out and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. I'm going to be very brief, so Andrew will come up and speak. Andrew has become like a son, and he will tell you how he got on this journey. But in 1957, at the age of 17, I applied to go to a little school called Troy State College, now known as Troy University. Submitted my application, my high school transcript. I never heard a word from the school, so I wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I didn't tell my mother, my father, any of my sisters or brothers, any of my teachers. Dr. King wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket and invited me to come to Montgomery to meet with him. In the meantime, I had been accepted at a little college in Nashville, Tennessee. An uncle of mine gave me a $100 bill, more money than I ever had. First part of September 1957. Gave me a Foot Locker, one of these big upright trunks that you can open up, bring it back together. Had the drawers, the drapers, the curtains, where you can hang your clothing on a rack. I put everything that I own in that Foot Locker, except the chickens that I had raised, and took a Greyhound bus to Nashville, Tennessee. And after being there for about 3 weeks, I told one of my teachers that I'd been in church with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This teacher had attended Morehouse College with Dr. King, and later he came to Howard University for graduate studies. Went back and became pastor of a church in Nashville. So he informed Dr. King that I was there. And Dr. King got in church with me and said, when you're home for spring break, to come and see him. So I took a Greyhound bus from Troy to Montgomery in March of 1958, and this time 18 years old. A young lawyer, never seen a lawyer before, black or white, by the name of Fred Gray, who was the lawyer for Rosa Parks, Dr. King, and the Montgomery movement, became our lawyer during the Freedom Rides and during the march from Selma to Montgomery. Met me at the Greyhound bus station, drove me to the church, pastored by the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, a colleague of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and ushered me into the pastor's study. And I saw Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy standing behind a desk. And Dr. King said, "Are you John Lewis? Are you the boy from Troy?" And I said, "Dr. King, I am John Robert Lewis." I gave my whole name. And he started calling me the boy from Troy. He told me that if I pursued my interest in going to Troy State College, not Troy University, my mother and father would have to file a suit against the Troy State University, Troy State College, against the State Board of Education. A home could be bombed or burned. We could lose the land. I went back home and had a discussion with my mother and my father. They were so afraid. They didn't want to have anything with my attempting to attend Troy State College. So I continued to study in Nashville. And it was in Nashville that we started studying the way of peace, the way of love, studying the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence. And we started sitting in. And when you visit the new African American Museum of History and Culture, you will see a long row, lunch counter, with people sitting on stools, similar to what we face in Nashville, what students face in Greensboro, North Carolina. And it reminded me today when I was walking through the museum, as I did a few days ago, of what happened. We would be sitting there in an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent fashion, waiting to be served. Black and white college students and some high school students. And someone would come up and spit on us, or put a lighted cigarette out in our hair, down our backs, pour hot water, hot coffee on us. And one day while we were sitting in, I heard that we may be arrested and go to jail. And if you notice, in March, book 1, book 2, and book 3, when I was being arrested or going to jail or marching, for the most time, I was sort of dressed up. Because during those days when we would sit in or go on a demonstration, young people wanted to be what some people call clean, sharp, or fresh. I wanted to be fresh. But I had very little money. I was a very poor student in terms of having resources. So a day or so before the next sit-in, I went down to a used men's store and bought a used suit. You know how much I paid for? And a vest came with the suit. You know how much I paid for this suit? I paid $5. If I still had the suit today, I probably could sell it on eBay for a lot of money. This young man did some research, Andrew Aydin. He located a copy of the photograph of me being arrested, had it, blew it up, and I tell you, I look good in that suit. But the first time that I was arrested, I felt free. I felt liberated. I felt like I crossed over. And I have not looked back since. So during the 60s, I was arrested 40 times. And since I've been in Congress, 5 more times. And I'm probably going to get arrested and go to jail for something else. So I know some of you saw, this is not in March, but Andrew, maybe the next book, we'll have to include it. A group of us came together to try to do something about gun violence. We wanted to get the majority party to bring a bill to the floor to do something about gun violence. We lost too many of our children. Too many of our mothers and fathers. Too many of our young people. We have to stop it. So people came to me and said, what should we do, John? So we should find a way to dramatize the issue, make it real. Our leadership didn't even know we were going to do it. So we made some 1-minute and 5-minute speeches, and the time came, the end of my speech, I said, it's time for action. I took a seat on the floor, and everybody else. First time in the history of our country that a group of members would occupy the well of the House. We had to do something. We're trying to get young people all over America and all over the world. When you see something, stand up, speak out. and do it in a peaceful, non-violent fashion. And never give up, never give in. Keep the faith. I first came to Washington in 1961 when I had all of my hair and a few pounds lighter to go on something called the Freedom Ride. Just think in 1961, the same year that President Barack Obama was born, that black people and white people in this city couldn't leave here, seated together on a Greyhound bus or Trailway bus to travel through the South, testing the decision of the United States Supreme Court. We were arrested, beaten in Rock Hill, South Carolina. The bus was bombed and burned between Atlanta and Birmingham, the Greyhound bus. Those on the Trailway bus were beaten in Birmingham. We were beaten in Montgomery, left bloody and unconscious. Over the summer of 1961, more than 400 people were arrested and jailed in Jackson, Mississippi. We filled the city jail, the county jail, and later they transported us to the state penitentiary at Parchment. But President Kennedy and his brother, Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, intervened and got the Interstate Commerce Commission to issue an order bringing down those signs that said white waiting, colored waiting, white men, colored men, white women, colored women. Those signs are gone. The only place that our children and their children will see those signs today will be in a book, in a museum, or on a video. So when people tell me nothing has changed, I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes. I will show you change. So we went through the sit-ins, the freedom ride, the whole fight, the right to vote. And Andrew would tell you that March, Book 3 is really about the Voting Rights Act effort in Mississippi, the bombing of the church in Birmingham, the march on Washington. We've come a distance. We made a lot of progress, but we're not there yet. But we will get there as a nation and as a people. And maybe with the help of March, the new museum, we get there, we will serve as a model for the rest of the world. And I said to the young people here, never become bitter or hostile. Keep the faith, be hopeful, never hate, but hate is too heavy a burden to bear. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you. Good job.
How do you follow that? My name is Andrew Aydin. I serve as Digital Director and Policy Advisor in the Congressman's Congressional Office, which means I tweet for a living. You might not recognize me. The last time I was here, I had a clean-shaven face, and so let me just come out and tell you why. Several months ago, almost a year now, someone started talking about why we should not have Muslim immigrants in this country. My father was a Muslim immigrant. Granted, he left my mother very young. I was raised by a single mother. But when I got to be a teenager, my mother would always say, you need to shave. No, I'm serious. Get that hair off your face. And I listened to her my whole life. Until I heard these things being said. My mother was right. She didn't want me to make it harder for myself. I'm from Georgia. The congressman's been my congressman since I was 3 years old. Georgia is not a friendly place. I mean, when I was a kid, I actually grew up in the midst of a terrorist bombing campaign committed by a Christian fundamentalist. And yet they're worried about the Muslims. And so when I heard these things, I felt like I had to do something. If I was going to spend the last 10 years of my life working for John Lewis, I could not do nothing. And so in my small way, I grew a beard because I wanted the people on Capitol Hill who are my colleagues to be sensitized to who the children of Muslim immigrants are. It is a nonviolent act. It is a simple act of education. It is not hard or difficult. Maybe some people look at me differently, but I am totally aware that I am using my privilege as a 6'3", whitish-looking male so that for someone else, for whom it is a little bit more difficult or a lot more difficult, they will have an easier time being themselves. So that's why I grew my beard. Now, what a day to be on stage with John Lewis. You know, when he started pushing for the museum, the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, everybody thought it was going to be too hard. Everybody thought telling that story to the American people in that way was impossible. People have been trying for 100 years to make it a reality. And yet John Lewis tried anyway. Just like 8 years ago, I came to him with a little idea about a comic book. Everybody thought it was nuts. They all laughed at me. And yet John Lewis believed in it, and he helped, and he pushed, just like he pushed and pushed to get the museum done. And so here we are on a single day, celebrating the opening of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and celebrating March Book 3 being on the long list of the National Book Award. So let me give you a brief summary of what I have learned, because I notice we've got a lot of teachers, we've got a lot of students in here, right? How many of y'all are teachers or educators or librarians? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. How many of you are students? That's very good. Oh yeah, somebody brought their class. So let me tell you the 3 things I learned in doing March. You take this with you, you tell them Andrew Aydin told you. Like that'll make a difference. First of all, show your work. All right? In the process of doing March, I had never written a book. You guys hold up March Book 1. People talk about it like it's canon. That is the first book I ever wrote. I did not know what I was doing. But the thing that stuck with me is that over and over and over again, as I interviewed the congressman, as I read these books, as I took notes, I kept showing my work so that I had a full notebook of everything I needed to know. And so when your math teacher tells you you have to show your work, and you say, but the answer is 7. Why are we debating this? I'm telling you, it's because you need to build that skill. You need to build that habit. So one day, you may be doing something completely unrelated, and it will save you. So show your work. Number 2, don't be afraid to be laughed at. From the very moment I mentioned that I enjoy going to Comic-Con, and yes, I love going to Comic-Con, my colleagues on the Hill, very uptight, professional, political operatives, they laughed at me. And every time I had a crazy idea, John Lewis, you should join Facebook. Well, that's silly. Why would you do that, you nerd? And they laughed at me over and over and over again. Well, who's laughing now? And number 3, question your sources. I think yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah. How about have sources? But that's another battle. Over and over and over again, I was able to defer to John Lewis for an answer. Because what I found in some of the works that are in our classrooms, that are in our libraries, they don't really have all their facts straight. And we were very lucky because with March and the creation of it, we experienced the first digitization of SNCC's primary records. And so when we had a question and John Lewis didn't know the answer and we couldn't find it in a book, or there were more often than not conflicting accounts in two different books, we went to the after action reports. We went to the Watts line reports. We went to the meeting minutes. In fact, there's a long scene in book 3 that you'll read about where they decide the fate of the Mississippi Freedom Summer. Nate has dubbed it the Council of Elrond. Lord of the Rings. But it is that moment. And people ask me, well, how did you know what they had to say on that, in that meeting? I said, well, I had the meeting minutes. So I just wrote down what they said. It's not very hard. If you do those 3 things, you're off to a good start. But as I mentioned at the beginning, I was raised by a single mother. Been on scholarship since the 4th grade. Another couple of years of this bestseller status, I might pay off my student loans. But out of it all, the greatest gift that I got was a father, was John Lewis. I didn't know it when I started answering his mail. That was my first job. It was a lot of Dear John letters. But if you work hard, if you do what you believe in, if you're not afraid to get laughed at, if you're able to do the work and find primary sources, anything's possible. So I ask each and every one of you, join us. March. Thank you.
So we should at least show the cover so they can see it. So can we at least get the cover up and then? But anyway, well, that's our time for this evening. Thank you guys so much. You know, first time we sat down, you told me this was going to be like the Star Wars trilogy, 3 books. And true to the Star Wars trilogy, and I guess Darth Vader was Bull O'Connor, or Bull Connor, I mean. We may get a new one.
I don't know, Vader became good in the end, right? I don't know about that, but Bull Connor.
We have a new one.
Generous. He's more Jabba the Hutt.
Now we need Jabba. Oh, I won't touch that in so many ways. But now, like Star Wars, we're going to get, I hope, future books, future entertainment. Maybe J.J. Abrams' reboot, who knows? But, you know, you'll keep marching. You guys will keep telling your story. Please keep telling it, because it needs to be heard in these times, in these eras, when many people want to be divisive. All across the line, we need people who remember what it's like to try to bring people together. Thank you guys so much. Congressman Lewis, Andrew Aydin, a big hand, please. Please stay in your seats. They're going to do a long march down the right side, and the signing will be in about half an hour. Thank you, a huge hand. Congressman Lewis, Andrew Aydin.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.